Have you ever, like, accepted a daily physical discomfort? A headache or fatigue, maybe just this persistent brain fog.
Oh, yeah. Just chalking it up to the cost of doing business, basically.
Exactly. Or you just tell yourself it's a natural part of getting older.
Right. Like, well, I guess this is just my life now. We all do it.
We really do. We normalize our own suffering. We subtly lower our baseline for what it means to feel good.
Until operating at like 50% actually feels like maximum capacity.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we're diving into today. Okay, let's unpack this because it is wild. Today's deep dive is about a man who is practically the poster child for operating at an elite external level.
While secretly dealing with a completely compromised internal baseline.
Right. We are talking about Stephen A. Smith. Now, if you follow sports, or honestly just American pop culture, you know exactly who he is.
Oh, absolutely. He's one of the loudest, most powerful voices in media right now.
Omnipresent. He's an executive producer, a New York Times bestselling author, the face of ESPN's First Take. But let me be incredibly clear right out of the gate. This deep dive is not about sports.
Not at all. It is about a radical biological and psychological transformation.
Yeah. It's about a man who realized at the absolute height of his career that he was operating at only 50% capacity.
And how he radically biohacked his way to an entirely new life.
Which is just fascinating. Our insights today are drawn directly from a deeply revealing conversation on Gary Brecka's Ultimate Human audio broadcast.
Where Smith just lays it all bare, the medical crises, the family trauma, and that relentless drive.
The mission for our deep dive today is to really uncover how elite professional performance is inextricably linked to optimized physical biology.
And how facing mortality can radically rewire someone's psychological baseline.
I mean, my initial reaction to hearing him describe his day-to-day existence was genuine shock. You see him on television, and he is essentially a human energy drink.
Totally. He's vibrating with intensity.
Yeah. The sheer physical stamina required to be that on in front of a live camera is staggering. So to find out he was secretly suffering behind the scenes.
It shatters the illusion, right? We just assume hyper-successful people have perfectly optimized internal states.
We really do. But before any transformation happens, we need to look at the painful baseline Smith accepted as normal.
Right. We have to establish the starting line.
And the starting line is rough. For 30 years, practically his entire adult life, he woke up with a headache every single day.
30 years. Just think about that.
10,000 mornings of waking up in pain. He said he just learned to work it off.
Which is such a psychological trap. Waking up in pain fundamentally alters your neurochemistry for the rest of the day.
Right, because you're instantly in the deficit.
Exactly. It triggers an early spike in cortisol, the stress hormone, before you even get out of bed. Your focus is fractured.
But the headaches weren't even the scariest part. His blood work was a ticking time bomb. His cholesterol was sitting at 284, and at one point it peaked at 301.
Which is an active crisis. A cholesterol level of 301 means severe accumulation of the bad cholesterol.
The LDL, right?
Yeah. Over time, that causes the inner lining of the blood vessels to become inflamed and damaged. The heart is working exponentially harder.
Just to pump blood through narrowed pipes. But you know what makes my blood boil? The medical advice he received.
Oh, it's incredibly frustrating.
He went to his doctors, and they essentially told him to just resign himself to it. They said, you're over 50, this is how it's going to be.
What's fascinating here is that this is a clinical phenomenon known as resigning to defect.
Resigning to defect, wow.
Yeah, it's an insidious trap. The medical establishment often inadvertently validates a decline in quality of life by just blaming the aging process.
Right. You just say it's father time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when an authority figure tells you that, you compartmentalize the suffering. You stop searching for a solution.
It's like driving a luxury sports car with the parking brake stuck.
Yeah.
You can still go fast if you floor the engine, but you are literally tearing the machine apart from the inside.
That's a great analogy.
Why do high achievers do this? Why do they so often treat their physical bodies as the absolute lowest priority on their checklist?
Well, high achievers build their success on mental override. Willpower is their hammer, They genuinely view the body as just a subordinate vehicle.
Just a meat sack to transport their brain to the next meeting.
Pretty much. Prioritizing sleep or nutrition feels like a distraction from the real work of empire building. Until the system crashes, of course.
And the system was definitely crashing. But the catalyst for change didn't come from a doctor. It came from Dana White.
The head of the UFC.
Right, who had his own famous health wake-up call. White was told he had like 10.4 years to live. fixed his health with Gary Brecka, and totally transformed.
So White introduces Smith to Brecka.
But he does it in the most hyper-competitive way possible. He places a bet.
A bet, of course he did.
He says, if you follow the protocol and fix your health, I will donate $20,000 to a charity of your choice. But if you fail, I promise relentless public ridicule.
That is just perfectly tailored to Smith's psychology. A health warning from a doctor failed, but a direct challenge to his ego.
Oh, that activated her immediately.
It completely shifts the framework from a tedious chore to a high-stakes game of avoiding public humiliation.
Exactly. So the bet is on. But before they even draw blood, Smith had one strict condition. He told them, do not tell me how long I have to live. Let the Lord take me when he's going to take me.
Which is just so revealing. Confronting the hard empirical data of his own mortality was terrifying for him.
It's a defense mechanism, right? If you don't know the deadline, you can pretend it doesn't exist.
Precisely. He was willing to endure the behavioral modifications, but he could not shoulder the psychological burden of a literal expiration date.
But the data they did get overrode all the guesswork. Let's talk about those daily headaches. For 30 years, he thought it was stress, but the diagnostics revealed he wasn't stressed at all.
Not at all. It was a simple lack of sodium.
Just sodium. Intracellular sodium, specifically. He started drinking a specific powder with water, and the headaches were completely cured in 3 months.
Here's where it gets really interesting. People think hydration is just chugging water, but water requires an osmotic gradient.
Right, without adequate sodium to actively pull the water into the cells, you're just flushing it out.
Exactly. And the brain's meninges, those protective membranes, when they are chronically deficient in sodium, they literally shrink and pull away from the skull.
They're dehydrated.
Right. And that mechanical pulling triggers intense pain receptors. That was his 30-year headache.
That is wild to me. A debilitating daily headache wasn't cured by some complex pharmaceutical, but by salt.
It really makes you wonder, for you listening right now, how many complex issues in your own life might have shockingly simple biological fixes?
We have a deep cultural tendency to catastrophize our ailments, to assume massive pain requires massive intervention.
But human biology is just biochemical inputs and outputs. Fix the input, the output corrects itself. But the sodium was just the start. His blood was, as Brecka put it, swimming in sugar.
Yeah, he was officially pre-diabetic. His A1C was at 6.3, and I think 6.4 is diabetic.
He was standing right on the edge of the cliff.
And his insulin levels were at a 27, highly insulin resistant. Through the protocol, he dropped that 27 down to a 2. Can you dive deep into the mechanics of that? What does insulin resistance actually do?
Sure. When you consume carbohydrates, your body breaks them down into glucose. Insulin is the hormone that signals your cells to open up and use that glucose for fuel.
But when you constantly flood your system with sugar,
your cells get overwhelmed. They protect themselves by locking the doors, essentially. That's insulin resistance.
so you have all this glucose trapped in the bloodstream.
Right. The pancreas panics, pumps out even more insulin, driving that level up to 27. You have massive fuel in the blood, but the actual cells in your muscles and brain are starving.
Which creates extreme lethargy and brain fog. Your brain demands glucose, but it can't get in.
And furthermore, insulin is a highly anabolic storage hormone. When it's that elevated, it makes it biologically impossible to burn stored fat.
Wow. It forces the body to store visceral fat instead, which explains his physical transformation once they fix the insulin.
Exactly. He dropped from 208 pounds down to 177 pounds.
Reduced his body fat from 29.5% to 14.6%. He went from a size 56 suit to a 50.
And importantly, he preserved his lean muscle mass while doing it.
Right. It wasn't just crash dieting, but we know how he fixed it. But to understand his obsessive drive to actually maintain it, we have to rewind.
To the terrifying moment that forced the change.
The crucible of COVID-19. An endoscopy appointment for acid reflux literally turned into a nightmare.
He left that appointment and spiked a 102.5 fever.
Which spiraled into severe double pneumonia. He spent New Year's Eve 2022 in a New Jersey emergency room.
And that interaction with Dr. Booth was chilling.
She pulled up his lung x-ray, and it was just fully white. Clouded.
Which indicates extreme inflammation and fluid accumulation. Healthy lungs should look dark on an x-ray.
She bluntly told him they'd try a steroid and antibiotic, and if it didn't work in 3 hours, she might need to call his family.
She was telling him to prepare for the end.
He was suffocating.
Yeah.
And the oxygen deprivation to his brain was so severe that he was actively hallucinating.
The brain requires immense oxygen. When pneumonia limits that transfer, the mind just fractures.
He hallucinated. He was a rapper, a singer. He even hallucinated playing competitive basketball against LeBron James.
Total detachment from reality.
But here is the most insane part. Despite all of this, he actually broadcasted NBA Countdown on Christmas Day from his home by himself.
While severely drained and hallucinating.
So I have to ask you, is that broadcasting on Christmas Day a sign of admirable dedication, or is it a sign of a toxic relationship with work?
This raises an important question. You do not reach the pinnacle of a hyper-competitive industry with a balanced perspective on work. To him, the broadcast is his identity.
But he prioritized the broadcast over his own survival. That isn't dedication, that is sickness. He valued the corporate ratings over his own life.
But that near-death experience in the ER is what shattered that exact toxicity.
Because it forced him to realize the difference between being alive and actually living.
Exactly. The illness stripped him entirely of his pride. It left him with 2 blown rotator cuffs, skinny fat with a pot belly.
Just a completely wrecked physical state. So how do you rebuild from that? You transition from passive suffering in a hospital bed to active suffering.
You choose hard things to rebuild your discipline.
Which brings us to the cold plunge. He installs this cold plunge tub, but the story of how he actually started using it is hilarious and brutal.
Intervention from Steve Harvey.
Yes. Smith is terrified of the cold water. He calls Steve Harvey looking for sympathy.
Which is a terrible idea.
A complete miscalculation. Harvey just tells him, "You gonna suffer and don't get no better."
Harvey was destroying the illusion of future comfort. He's saying motivation isn't coming. It's always going to be cold.
So Smith gets in. He lasts 5.5 minutes, which is great. He calls Harvey back, all proud of himself.
And Harvey asks him how he was sitting in the tub.
Right. Smith admits his arms and hands were resting on the rims out of the water. And Harvey tells him it didn't count.
Which, neurologically speaking, is completely accurate.
Wait, really?
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the highest concentration of cold receptors is around the neck, upper chest, and hands.
So by keeping his arms out, he was cheating the biological response.
Exactly. Submerging those areas triggers a massive release of norepinephrine for focus and dopamine for mood. It also activates brown fat.
Brown fat, not the bad white fat, right?
Right. Brown fat burns calories rapidly to generate heat. When Smith left his arms out, he kept a psychological tether to comfort. He muted the neurochemical reward.
It's the literal equivalent of eating the frog, but submerging yourself in freezing water to reset your dopamine baseline. So for you listening, what is the cold plunge in your life that you are avoiding?
Voluntary exposure to physical stress completely alters how your brain processes daily psychological stress.
Because after fighting your survival reflex to get into freezing water, dealing with Twitter haters or corporate bosses feels trivial.
It builds mental calluses. And that discipline bled right into his dietary shifts.
Oh yeah, throwing away unopened boxes of honeycombs and Fruit Loops.
Commercial cereal is basically hyper-palatable, simple carbohydrates, immediate glucose flood, massive insulin spike.
He cut out bread entirely, reduced his cheeseburger intake from every 2 days to maybe 1 or 2 a month.
A total rewiring of his reward system. But we have to look backward to understand what fuels a man in his mid-50s to maintain this extreme discipline.
The deep roots, the family trauma. His memoir, Straight Shooter, is basically a tribute to his mother.
Her sacrifice was immense. Extreme poverty, working 2 jobs, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Relying on government cheese, with only 1 week of vacation a year. And contrast that with his intense resentment for his father,
who neglected them and gave his income to a second family.
Witnessing that abandonment early on puts a child's nervous system into a permanent state of hypervigilance.
You learn very early that security is fragile, and you can only rely on your own output.
And that trauma was compounded by the tragic death of his brother in 1992.
Yes, the car crash in Texas.
His brother was asleep in a 15-passenger van without a seatbelt. The van flipped, and he died.
And that specific trauma is why Smith insists on driving himself everywhere to this day.
He absolutely refuses to place his life in someone else's hands. He has to control the wheel.
It's a direct psychological response to his brother dying while asleep in a vehicle controlled by someone else.
It's heartbreaking. And that intense love for his mother created the most bittersweet moments of his career. In 2005, he signed a $1.3 million contract.
And immediately pulled his mom out of her part-time PL bingo job.
He said it was his proudest moment. But then, in 2018, he signs a massive mega deal, unlimited money. And he just cried.
because she had passed away the year prior at age 49.
He could finally buy her the house in St. Thomas or send her on more cruises. He'd already sent her on 26, but she was gone.
So, what does this all mean? The paradox of the hyperachiever. You grind relentlessly to take care of the people you love, but when you reach the summit, they aren't there to share the view.
It's a brutal irony. And his father's neglect rewired his entire philosophy on fatherhood.
He built his identity as the anti-version of his father. His rule is, if my children are hungry, it's because I'm starving.
That tough love came straight from his mom, too. When he complained about ESPN bosses or racial pigeonholing, she just told him to suck it up.
Because bosses don't want minors working for them.
And that advice carried him through being unemployed for a year in 2009.
And being banished to radio until 2012. He had to grind his way back.
Which brings us to his current state. He is in what he calls takeover mode.
Mid-50s, completely optimized and accelerating.
Opening his own studio in Jersey City, eyeing late-night television. He is holding people accountable on air.
Making Marcus Spears hand him $1,000 in cash for a lost bet.
Exactly. He admires leaders like Bob Iger, Jimmy Pitaro, Ari Emanuel. Zero tolerance for laziness or corner cutting.
Because biology is a reflection of character. If you cut corners on your health, you'll cut corners in business.
Which leads to his definition of the ultimate human. Someone who is supremely healthy, oozes vitality, and shares it.
He believes keeping greatness to yourself is inherently selfish. Positive feelings are an addiction now. There is no wealth without health.
So let me ask you, is this takeover mode a state of healthy ambition, or is he perpetually running away from the ghost of the 50% version of himself?
I think it's both. Trauma leaves a permanent engine inside you. You can't turn it off, but you can change the fuel.
He used to fuel it with anxiety and processed sugar.
Now he fuels it with optimized insulin, cold exposure, and legacy. The drive is identical, but the chassis can actually withstand the velocity.
That is perfectly said. To recap, we've watched a man go from an insulin-resistant, hallucinating patient in an ER to a hyper-optimized media titan who refuses shortcuts.
And the takeaway for you listening is that you have agency. The data, your blood work, your composition is available.
You don't have to treat physical pain as an inevitable anchor. You can take control.
You really can stop accepting 50% as your normal.
Which leaves me with one final provocative thought. We often attribute our moods, burnout, and cynicism to our environment or our jobs, right? We say, well, this is just who I am.
But what if it's not?
Exactly. What if your current personality is just a symptom of unoptimized biology? If you fixed the biology, stripped away the brain fog, and actually nourished your cells, who would you actually become? What is your personal 50%? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it?